My name is Sonia, and at 29 years old, the heater kicked on just as the first pale stretch of sunlight slipped through the trees outside, humming softly through the vents. I blinked into the muted morning glow spilling between the slats of the old blinds in my childhood bedroom. The air carried a faint trace of cinnamon and pine, warm, nostalgic, almost comforting. For a heartbeat, it felt like every Christmas morning I'd ever known here. Quiet, golden, full of expectation. I reached for my phone automatically. Not out of panic, just habit. The boutique's Portland expansion was finally in motion. We'd signed the lease, vendors confirmed, projections solid. My numbers had been tight, consistent, even strong. I hadn't checked my accounts in a few days. The holidays had a way of softening my edges, of reminding me to breathe. The banking app took longer than usual to load, rural Wi-Fi dragging like always. I entered my passcode, thumb hovering for a second before pressing down. The screen flickered, then cleared. Balance, 0. I blinked, waited. Maybe it hadn't refreshed. Swiped down again, still 0. I opened my business account. 0. The savings. 0. Even the emergency fund I almost never touched. 0. My heart clenched. If you've ever known the sting of betrayal from those who were supposed to love you most, tell me where you're watching from. At first I told myself it was some kind of error, a glitch, a delay, but my hands were already trembling as I pulled up the transaction history. Dozens of outgoing transfers, all perfectly sequenced, each one authorized. No alerts, no verification warnings, all confirmed from a trusted device. I hadn't logged in since December 23rd. The log showed access from a recognized location. Someone in this house. I sat there frozen. Downstairs, I could hear the slow shuffle of footsteps, the scrape of a chair, a drawer opening. The smell of coffee drifted up through the hallway vent. I pulled on a sweatshirt, slid my feet into slippers, and opened the door. The hallway glowed with the soft gold of Christmas garlands. From the living room, an old holiday playlist played faintly, jazzy, cheerful, completely out of sync with the thudding in my chest. Everything looked the same as always, but that number, $250,000, echoed in my mind, heavy and unreal. Gone. The kitchen was already alive with the noise of breakfast. My mother stood at the stove humming along to Let It Snow, stirring a pan of scrambled eggs. The oven door hissed as cinnamon rolls baked inside. Mason sat at the table, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, half smiling at something on the screen. "Morning," I said, sliding into a chair across from him. He looked up, smirked. "You look rough," I ignored it. My voice was level, too level. "I need to tell you both something. Last night, someone drained every one of my accounts. Personal business, everything. $250,000. Mason didn't even blink. My mother froze mid-stir, wooden spoon hovering over the pan. "Gone?" she repeated softly. "Gone," I said. "Transferred out around 1:30 a.m. from a known device logged under my profile." Mason leaned back in his chair, stretching like this was all just another morning. That familiar smirk tugged at his mouth. The same one that used to make my stomach tighten when we were kids. The one that always meant he knew something I didn't. "Prove it, Ms. CEO." My mother let out a small, nervous laugh, turning back to the stove. "Sweetheart, it's Christmas. It's probably just a system thing. Maybe your bank's having issues. You've been working too hard lately." I kept my eyes on Mason. I checked the logs. He arched a brow, unimpressed. "You're overreacting. You probably misread something. Happens when you don't sleep." I didn't respond. I just watched him. Every movement. His hands. The lazy tilt of his head. That same smug sip of coffee. Was proof enough. I didn't need him to confess. And when Mom didn't say anything, didn't look at him, I had all the confirmation I'd ever need. He wasn't new to this. I'd just spent years pretending not to see it. When I was 15, I'd saved up for my first phone. Cheap, blue, with little silver stars I'd painted on the back. I loved that thing. 3 days before my birthday, it vanished. Mom said I'd misplaced it. I turned the house upside down searching. A week later, I found it sitting on Mason's dresser. Same stars, same smudge by the hinge. Different SIM card. He walked in while I was holding it. "You went through my stuff?" he said calmly. That's mine. No, it's not. You're confused. And when I told Mom, she said, you probably left it in his room. Sonia, your brother wouldn't steal from you. He always got away with it. Every time. When I was 16, we entered a science fair together. I built everything. The model, the research, the board. The morning of the event, he walked in, slapped his name next to mine, and when we won, he gave the speech. We worked really hard, he'd said, smiling for the camera. In college, he convinced me to co-sign a phone contract so he could build credit. Within 3 months, the calls from collections started. He shrugged it off. Don't be dramatic. It's just a couple $100. And every time I forgave him. Told myself he'd grow up, that he'd stop taking and twisting things. But he never did. He just got better at hiding it. Now here he was, older, smoother, more dangerous, sitting across from me like he hadn't just gutted my future. When I went back upstairs, the air in my room felt colder somehow. Everything was neatly in place. My throw blanket folded, my laptop closed on the desk, my charger coiled beside it. Untouched. Perfect. But my gut told me otherwise. I sat down, pressed the power button. The screen blinked to life, familiar and harmless. My desktop looked unchanged, but when I reached around to unplug the charger, I noticed something off. The cord was in the right side port. I never used that one. It was loose, always flickered out. My fingers brushed against something small and metallic. A USB drive. Silver, with a clear plastic cap and the faintest smudge of coral pink lipstick. Not mine. My stomach sank. I plugged it into my backup laptop, the one I used for travel and testing. At first glance, the drive looked empty. Then I checked the metadata. Created 1:34 a.m., modified 1:36 a.m., device name, Talbot Core. My network, my laptop, my house. I took screenshots, archived everything, then sent them through Signal to my tech contact. Need you to pull shadow data off this drive, I typed. Timestamp confirms access while I was asleep. Got it, came the reply. Don't touch anything else. Back everything up. I'll scrape the logs. I stared at the message long after it faded. The room wasn't peaceful anymore. It was still in that heavy, suffocating way things get after they break, not before. I made the backups, encrypted them, and sat back in silence. It wasn't just the money. It was the certainty, the arrogance of believing I'd never see it coming. By the time I went back downstairs, the living room was a blur of torn wrapping paper and leftover laughter. Coffee cups cluttered every surface. My cousins posed for half-blurry photos. The smell of cinnamon and pine clung to the air. My mother sat in the center of it all, beaming like nothing had happened. Mason stepped forward, a small blue velvet box in his hand. For you, he said lightly, holding it out to her. Something timeless. She gasped, delighted, opening it slowly. Inside, resting in satin, was a sapphire teardrop necklace. The necklace. The same one I'd bookmarked weeks ago after finalizing the Portland lease. I hadn't bought it yet. I was saving it for after launch, a gift for her when everything came together. Now it glittered in her palm. Oh, Mason, she breathed, tears already in her eyes. It's beautiful. You didn't have to. He shrugged, smiling that modest, camera-ready smile. You deserve nice things. And as she wrapped her arms around him, pressing a kiss to his cheek, I just stood there, silent, watching the sapphire catch the morning light, knowing exactly where it had come from. You're such a good son. I stood completely still, watching the whole thing like someone observing their own memory get rewritten in real time. I didn't need to ask where he got the idea or the money. I knew of all the things he could have bought, had chose that necklace, that design, that moment. It wasn't enough to take the money. He wanted to take the intention to hand over something I dreamed of giving and claim it as his own. My hand stayed at my sides. My expression didn't change, but inside something quiet and sharp twisted a little deeper. This was what he always did. He didn't just erase lines. He signed his name over them, recast the scene, changed the script, gave himself the final line while I faded into the background. And everyone around him let it happen. My mother held the necklace against her collarbone, beaming, asking someone to help clasp it. I turned away before I was asked to. Back upstairs, I shut the door, sat in the bed, and opened my laptop again. The screenshots were still there. The timestamps, the logs, the drive metadata. So was the weight in my chest, but it was changing. No longer just shock. Now it felt like evidence. The email came in just after lunch. A subject line I didn't think twice about: updated lease agreement, final draft attached. It was from my real estate attorney in Portland. Routine. We'd been ironing out the final clauses for weeks. I assumed it was a confirmation. A small piece of good news in a day that had given me nothing but silence and smirks. I clicked it open. Everything looked right at first. Same address, same terms, same square footage. I scanned through quickly, half out of habit, until I got to the signature page. Owner Taj, operator M. Talbot Holdings LLC, signed Mason Talbot. Date December 24th. I blinked, then blinked again. It wasn't a typo. His name was there, typed cleanly where mine should have been. A fabricated LLC I'd never heard of before, using our last name, but not my credentials. I opened the edit history. His email was listed as the last modifier. I didn't need a second opinion. He hadn't just touched my money. He'd gone further, reaching into the next chapter of my life. The one I'd worked for, the one I hadn't even lived yet. And he'd started rewriting it in his name. I stared at the screen, not moving for a minute. I couldn't feel my hands. Then I opened the folder on my desktop and created a new one, case initiated into it. I dropped the PDF, then the metadata screenshots, then the photos of the USB, the lipstick smudge, the login times. I copied the signal thread with Thing and saved the camera footage timestamp logs I'd already begun requesting from my backup drive. I labeled everything, cross-referenced, built a timeline. It felt like a ritual, like preparing for something sacred or terrible. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even curse his name. I just worked because this wasn't about a lease anymore. It was about proof, pattern, intent. He wanted the storefront, the name, the credit, the power. And I knew then, with a certainty I hadn't let myself believe before, that he wouldn't stop until everything I built had his name etched over mine. I closed the file, sat back, and stared at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. The next time he looked at me, I wouldn't be the quiet one. I'd almost forgotten I packed it. Tucked beneath a rolled-up scarf in the bottom of my bag was the mini cam I'd used in the back office of the boutique during a string of late-night inventory thefts. Motion-activated, time-stamped, discreet. I'd meant to install it at the new Portland location after the holidays, but now it felt like I'd brought it here for a different reason. I plugged it into my backup laptop and waited. The files loaded slowly. Each clip was 5 seconds unless motion had been detected. I scanned the thumbnails until I found the one I needed. December 25th, 1:31 a.m., the room flickered to life. Grainy footage, slightly angled but clear enough. Mason wearing one of Mom's robes, his hair pushed back, moving with ease. No hesitation, no sign of guilt. He sat at my desk, opened my laptop, plugged in a USB, the same one I'd pulled from the port that morning. Had typed fast like he'd done it before. Then he leaned back, smirked at the screen, and left. No audio, no shadows, no mystery, just fact. I paused the video and let the silence stretch around me. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft, deliberate, rehearsed, confident. I picked up my phone and called Thing. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I have it." Footage timestamp matches. It's him. He didn't respond right away. Then we're moving forward. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. Yes, start drafting the timeline. I'm done waiting. Copy that. Back up everything again. I'll prep an encrypted folder. I ended the call and turned back to the laptop, letting the video loop once more. Mason's smirk didn't sting this time. It clarified. He thought I'd freeze. He didn't expect me to record him doing it. I copied the clip to the evidence folder and labeled it primary footage 1:31 a.m., entry plus USB. Then I closed the laptop and let the room fall dark again. There was no going back now. The table was quieter than usual. Most of the family had gone home. The wrapping paper cleared. The music dialed down. It was just the three of us now. Me, Mason, and Mom, eating what was left of the holiday roast, surrounded by the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just dense. I cut a piece of sweet potato, set down my fork, and let my voice stay calm. "I've been thinking a lot about boundaries lately," I said. Mason didn't look up. He kept buttering his roll. "About how easy it is to cross a line when you think no one's watching," I continued, "and how some people take things just because they believe no one will stop them." He froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Mom reached for the gravy, eyes still on her plate. "You're always so serious this time of year," she said lightly. "I think I've just finally learned how to see things for what they are." Mason looked up then, slow and measured. "Still spiraling over your spreadsheets?" I smiled, not the kind that gave anything away. "No, just realizing the difference between a mistake and a pattern." He didn't reply, didn't smirk. Just went back to eating slower this time. Mom cleared her throat. "Can we not do this tonight?" He nodded once, still watching Mason. The air between us had changed. Not by much, but enough. He felt it, the shift, the quiet that didn't come from retreat, but from readiness. He couldn't tell what I had, but he knew I had something, and for the first time he didn't look so sure of himself. I finished my plate insolence and stood to clear it, hearing my own heartbeat steady and strong in my ears. The game had already started. Hay just hadn't realized he wasn't the only one playing. It happened just after 10 winds. I was in the kitchen rinsing a glass when the knock came. Firm, deliberate, no hesitation. 3 seconds later, it came again. Mason glanced up from the living room, brows furrowed. Mom was in her robe, slippers shuffling across the tile as she made her way to the front door. I followed. When she opened it, 2 officers stood outside. One held a clipboard. The other rested a hand lightly on his belt. "Is Mason Talbot present?" the taller one asked. Mom blinked. "I'm sorry, we have a warrant. Financial fraud, wire transfer abuse. We need to speak with him immediately." Mason stepped into the foyer, his usual grin halfway formed before it faltered. "What's this about?" he asked, voice still casual but thinner now. I stepped forward and handed over the folder. Documents, screenshots, timestamps, footage, everything labeled, cataloged, ready. He used my device, I said. He forged my lease, accessed my accounts. The details are inside. Mason stared at me, color draining fast. "You're serious?" The officer took the folder without a word, flipping through the first few pages. Then he turned to Mason. "We'll need you to come with us now." Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes shifted between us like she'd stumbled into a scene she couldn't rewrite. "Mason," she said, voice cracking. "Tell them this is a mistake." He didn't answer. He didn't look at her, just let them guide him out the door and down the steps in silence. She turned home, eyes glassy, jaw tight. But there was no apology in her face, only betrayal, as if I was the one who'd broken something. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I just watched the door close behind him. The morning we opened, the sun cut clean through the front windows, lighting every corner of the space I had imagined for years. Reclaimed wood shelves lined the walls. The checkout counter sat beneath a hand-painted sign that read, "Third Thread." It was quiet. No ribbon cutting, no press, just me unlocking the door and turning the sign to open. I didn't invite anyone from home. I didn't need them there. The quote hung behind the counter in a small glass frame, my father's handwriting, faded but sure. "You don't have to scream to be powerful." It reminded me of the grocery lists used to leave. The birthday notes tucked into coat pockets. The kind of voice that didn't shout, but stayed. I hadn't heard from Mason since the arrest. No calls, no messages. His lawyer reached out once. I forwarded everything to Thing. The case moved forward without me needing to show up again. Mom sent one text the week after he was taken. "You went too far." I didn't answer. Some people don't grieve the loss of a relationship. They grieve the loss of the role they played in keeping you small. I didn't miss her voice. I had my own now. The door opened. A customer stepped inside, looking up at the shelves, the soft green walls, the quiet welcome of the space. I smiled and stood tall behind the counter.